In this story, you'll hear about a man who spent 10 years believing in love, only to discover that the woman he loved had been living a quiet lie. One overheard conversation changed everything, forcing him to walk away and face the truth he had ignored for far too long. I always believed that love was something you nurtured, something that grew stronger over time if you put in the effort for the past 10 years. I lived by that belief, building my marriage with patience and dedication. My wife, Meredith, was everything. To me, she was beautiful in a quiet, unassuming way, soft brown eyes, a gentle smile that once made my heart race, and a voice that felt like home. I built my world around her, convinced that we were partners, a team against whatever life threw at us, but all it took was one night, one overheard conversation to bring it all crashing down. That evening had been nothing out of the ordinary. I'd come home from work a little later than usual, exhausted, but eager to see my wife. The house smelled like lavender and warm vanilla, the scent of the candles she loved to light. I kicked off my shoes, loosened my tie, and was about to call out to her when I heard her voice drifting from the living room. At first, I assumed she was on the phone with a friend. Her tone was casual, light, but then I heard my name. Tobias just doesn't get it. I can't stand him anymore. I froze, my body turned cold. Every little thing he does annoys me. He's so predictable, so dull, I feel like I'm suffocating. The words slammed into me like a sledgehammer. My heart pounded and my ears drowning out whatever was being said next. I wanted to believe I had misheard, that it was a joke, some misunderstanding, but there was no mistaking the frustration in her voice, the exhaustion that came with the truth too long held back. I should have walked into the room and confronted her. I should have asked her what she meant, why she felt that way, but instead, I stayed in the hallway, hidden in the shadows, gripping the doorframe as if it could hold me together. Then her voice lowered, and what she said next shattered me completely. I haven't loved him in years. I don't know how to leave. He's comfortable, reliable, but I don't want reliable. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I forgot how to breathe. The love of my life, the woman I had spent a decade devoted to, saw me is nothing more than a burden, a cage. I don't know how long. I stood there drowning in the weight of those words. A part of me wanted to barge in and demand answers, to make her see the pain she had just inflicted on me without even realizing I was there. Another part of me wanted to disappear, to erase the last 10 years and pretend I had never heard any of it. But what I did next was something I never thought I'd have the strength to do. I turned around, walked to her bedroom, and grabbed a duffel bag from the closet. My hands trembled as it stuffed clothes inside, enough for a few days, maybe a week. My mind was blank, my body moving on autopilot. As I zipped up the bag, caught a glimpse of our wedding photo on the dresser. Meredith was beaming, her arms wrapped around me, her eyes full of love and promise. I stared at that photo, feeling like a fool. Had it all been a lie? Had she been waiting for an excuse to leave this entire time? I clenched my jaw and tore my gaze away, walking back down the hallway. I heard her laugh at something, a light, careless sound, as if she hadn't just ripped my heart out of my chest. I stood there for a second, gripping the duffel bag before stepping into the room. She was sitting on the couch, phone pressed to her ears, smiling. That smile died the second she saw me standing there, my bag in hand. Tobias, she blinked, confusion flickering across her face. What are you doing? I didn't answer right away. I just let the silence stretch, watching as she shifted uncomfortably under my gaze. I wanted to see at that moment when she realized. Heard everything that moment when the wall she had carefully built around her double life came crumbling down. And then I said the only thing that felt right in that moment. I hope you find what you're looking for. Meredith, her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. I didn't wait for her to speak. I turned on my heel, walked to the front door, and left. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what came next. All I knew was that I was done being someone's comfortable option. The cold night air hit me as I street. Saint outside, but I barely felt it. My mind was a blur, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I didn't know where I was going, only that I needed to go. I climbed into my car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. A deep, shaky breath left my lips, but it did nothing to steady me. Meredith's words replayed over and over in my mind like a cruel echo that wouldn't fade. I haven't loved him in years. I don't know how to leave. I should have been angry, furious, but all I felt was an unbearable holes, the kind of emptiness that settled deep in my bones, making me question everything I thought I knew 10 years gone. I had spent a decade of my life loving a woman who saw me as nothing more than a comfortable option. The worst part? I hadn't seen it coming, not once. I stared at the road ahead, my vision blurring. I couldn't go to a friend's house. Most of our friends were mutual, and the last thing I wanted was to explain why. I was showing up at their doorstep in the middle of the night with a duffel bag. My parents lived states away in a hotel that would only make this more real. I wasn't ready for that, so without thinking, I started driving. The roads were empty, streetlights casting long, ghostly shadows over the pavement. My hands tightened around the wheel as I replayed every moment of my marriage, looking for the cracks. I had been too blind to see the way. Meredith had slowly stopped reaching for my hand, the way she sighed when I talked about my day, the way she had started spending more time on her phone, smiling at text I wasn't a part of. Had she been waiting for me to leave all along? Into an empty parking lot near the waterfront, my chest heaving with the weight of my thoughts. The waves crashed against the shore, in the distance steady and rhythmic, an unsettling contrast to the chaos inside me. I turned off the engine, resting my forehead against the steering wheel for the first time since hearing those words. I let myself feel it, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the humiliation of knowing my wife had been pretending for years. I clenched, my jaw swallowing the lump in my throat. I wanted to believe that this was salvageable, that maybe this was just some fleeting frustration on her part. But those words weren't spoken in anger, they were spoken in truth. I had already lost her. I just hadn't realized it until now. A sudden vibration jolted me out of my thoughts, my phone lighting up in the darkness. Meredith. For a long moment, I just stared at the screen, then against my better judgment, I answered. Tobias. Her voice was hesitant, unsure. Where are you? I didn't respond. The silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. She exhaled. Look, I don't know what's going on, but I heard you, said quietly. A pause, then softer. What? I heard you, Meredith. My voice was steady, despite the storm raging inside me. I heard everything. The silence on the other end was deafening. She hesitated. Tobias? I didn't mean don't lie to me. Her breath hitched. Another silence. Then finally, she said, where are you? I could have told her, could have given her the chance to fix this, to spend some excuse or beg for forgiveness, but I didn't want to hear it, so I hung up, and for the first time in years, I let myself accept the truth. I had spent a decade loving a woman who didn't love me back, and I wasn't going to waste another second. I didn't sleep that night after hanging up on Meredith. I just sat in my car, staring out at the dark ocean. Stretching endlessly in front of me, the waves crashed against the shore, steady and relentless, oblivious to the storm inside. Me. My hands were still gripping the steering wheel, my knuckles white, my body rigid, like I was bracing for impact, even though the wreckage had already happened at some point. I checked my phone again. 8 missed calls, 3 texts. The first was short. Meredith, where are you? The second was a little more desperate. Meredith, Tobias. Come home, we need to talk. The third one was what made my stomach turn. Meredith, you're being dramatic. Let's be adults about this. Dramatic. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. I had just overheard my wife say she couldn't stand me, that she hadn't loved me in years, and I was the one being dramatic. She had reduced our entire marriage to something inconvenient, and now she wanted to talk like it was some casual misunderstanding. I threw my phone onto the passenger seat and rubbed my hands over my face. The exhaustion was creeping in, but there was no way I could sleep. My body was running on adrenaline and heartbreak, my mind replaying every little moment. I had ignored every warning sign. I had chosen not to see. I had been so blind, and yet despite everything, I felt this strange numb and calm. Like the worst had already happened, and now there was nothing left to do but accept it as the first hints of morning light crept over the horizon. I finally started my car again. I couldn't sit here forever. I didn't know what my next move was, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going home instead. I drove. I didn't have a destination in mind. I just let the road stretch. Out before me, the miles putting distance between me and the life I no longer recognized. I passed through empty streets, the world slowly waking up around me, completely unaware that mine had just collapsed. It wasn't until my stomach started to remind me that I hadn't eaten in hours that I pulled into the parking lot of a small knee diner on the outskirts of town. It was the kind of place I wouldn't normally stop at. Faded neon sign, flickering part, a lot half empty, the smell of grease and coffee wafting from inside, but right now, I just needed somewhere to sit, somewhere to breathe. I walked in and took a seat at the counter, my body heavy with exhaustion. A waitress appeared, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and a kind smile. She poured me a cup of coffee without asking, like she could tell just by looking at me that I needed it. Tough night, she asked, raising an eyebrow. I let out a breathless laugh. You could say that she didn't pry, just nodded and slid a menu toward me before walking away to give me space. I appreciated that the last thing I wanted was to explain myself to a stranger when I barely understood. What? I was feeling myself. I sat there for a long time, staring at the menu without really seeing it. The world around me felt distant, like I was watching it happen through a screen. The chatter of the other customers, the clinking of silverware, the hum of an old radio playing a song. I didn't recognize it all felt normal, like everything was still the same, even though my world had shattered just hours ago. I should have been home right now. Should have been waking up next to Meredith, making coffee, starting another ordinary day, but instead, I was here sitting in a rundown diner, trying to figure out how to piece my life back together when I didn't even know where to start. Then my phone buzzed again. Another text. Meredith. Tobias. Please at least let me explain. Explain what that she had been pretending for years, that every time she told me she loved me, it was a lie that she had been waiting for the moment to leave, but hadn't mustered up the courage, so she let me keep loving her like a fool. I gritted my teeth and shoved my phone back into my pocket. I wasn't ready to hear her excuses, not yet, maybe not ever, for the first time in years. I had to think about me. What? I wanted what I needed, and I had no idea where to start. I sat in that diner for what felt like hours, my coffee growing cold, my thoughts circling the drain, the weight of last night pressed against my chest, but the numb was creeping in, dulling the sharp edges of my heartbreak. I should have been falling apart, but instead, I just felt empty at some point. The waitress came back. She didn't ask if I was ready to order. She just studied me for a moment before refilling my cup. You look like someone who needs a hot meal, she said. Pancakes or eggs? I blinked at her. Pancakes? She nodded, scribbled something on her notepad, and walked away. I didn't even have the energy to argue. I just sat there staring at my reflection in the window. My hair was a mess, my shirt wrinkled from sitting in the car all night, my eyes hollow. I barely recognized myself. The door chimed behind me as someone new walked in, but I didn't turn to look. I kept my eyes on the window, watching the sun creep higher into the sky. Then I heard a voice. A voice I did recognize. Tobias. My stomach dropped. I turned slowly, already bracing myself, and there she was. Meredith. She stood near the entrance, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her hair a little messy, like she had rushed out of the house. Her expression was unreadable, somewhere between frustration and desperation. For a second, neither of us spoke. The diner felt suddenly too quiet, like the entire place was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. I exhaled slowly, gripping my coffee cup a little tighter. How did you find me? She took a hesitant step forward. You always drive when you're upset? Figured you'd end up somewhere quiet. She glanced around, her lips pressing together. Didn't expect a diner, though. I didn't say anything. She sighed, shifting her weight. It's like she was trying to decide how to start. You disappeared, Tobias. I woke up and you were just gone. I didn't disappear, I said evenly. I walked away. She flinched. Good. I gestured to the empty seat across from me. Since you're here, go ahead, explain. She hesitated, like she hadn't expected me to actually listen, but after a moment, she sat down, folding Her hands on the table, she looked nervous. That was new. I didn't mean for you to hear that, she admitted. I was just venting. I scoffed, venting. Yes, she leaned forward slightly. Tobias, every couple has rough patches. Sometimes we say things we don't mean in the moment. I tilted my head. How long has our rough patch been going on? Her lips parted, but she hesitated. I nodded, the answer already clear. You said you haven't loved me in years. Meredith, that's not a rough patch. That's not something you say in frustration. That's the truth. Her eyes darted away, guilt flashing across her face. I swallowed, the numbness in my chest cracking just a little. All this time, you've just been waiting. For what, for me to leave first, for a reason to run? No, she said quickly. I wasn't waiting. She rubbed her temples, exhaling sharply. I didn't know how to bring it up. Didn't know how to bring up the fact that you don't love me anymore. My voice was quiet, but there was steel beneath. It's so instead you let me keep trying, you let me believe. She winced. I didn't mean for it to be like this. I let out a humorless laugh, but it as the waitress arrived then, setting a plate of pancakes in front of me, her eyes flickering too. Meredith, for half a second, before walking away without a word, the tension was suffocating. I pick up my fork, her hands tightening into fists. So what now? I didn't answer right away. I took a slow bite of my food, letting the silence stretch. When I finally spoke, my voice was calm. I don't know yet. I'm not going to be your comfortable option anymore. Her face paled for the first time since hearing those words. I finally felt like I had control again. Meredith sat across from me, her face unreadable, but I knew her too well. She was nervous, she was scrambling. This wasn't how she had expected things to go. Maybe she thought I'd break down, beg for an explanation, fight to fix what was already broken, beyond repair, but I wasn't playing into that. I wasn't going to be the man who begged to be loved. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, but then she hesitated. Instead, she reached for the sugar packet on the table, fidgeting with it, avoiding my gaze. I watched her carefully. After 10 years of marriage, I had learned to read the small things, the way she bit her lip, when she was lying, the way her fingers tapped, when she was holding back. I used to love those little things now. I hated how well. Still knew her. She finally sighed, her shoulders slumping. Not proud of what I said, she admitted, but you have to understand, I wasn't trying to hurt you. I took another slow bite of my food, barely tasting it. So are you trying to do? She frowned, shifting in her seat. I don't know, I guess. I felt stuck for a long time, like I woke up one day and realized I wasn't the same person I was when we got married. She exhaled sharply, and I know that's not fair to you. I know. I should have talked to you about it, but Tobias, you've never been good at seeing the signs. You always assume everything's fine. I stared at her because you let me think it was. She flinched, but didn't argue. I set my fork down, leaning forward slightly. Let me ask you something, Meredith. If I hadn't overheard you, would you have ever told me? She looked away. That was all? The answer I needed. I clenched my jaw, feeling my stomach twist. I had been married to a woman who was perfectly fine living a lie. A woman who had chosen to stay not out of love, but because it was easier than leaving the worst part. I still didn't know if she would have ever left on her own, or if she would have just stayed miserable, resenting me until we were both too old to change anything. She rubbed her temples. I don't know what you want me to say. I let out a breath, leaning back in my chair. That's the problem, Meredith, you never do. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The sounds of the diner hummed around. It's the clinking of dishes, the low murmur of conversation, the old jukebox crackling in the background. Then she did something that caught me off guard. She reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. It was instinct to look at her then, and for the first time since this conversation started, I saw something raw in her expression, not guilt, not regret, fear. I don't want to lose you, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I blinked. Of all the things I had expected her to say, that wasn't one of them. I pulled my hand back, studying her. You don't want to lose me, but you don't love me. She swallowed hard. I don't know. I don't know if what we have is love anymore, Tobias, but I don't want it to end like this. I let out a humorless laugh. You don't want it to end because it's messy, because it's uncomfortable, not because you actually want me. She didn't deny it. That was it. That was the final nail in the coffin. I exhaled slowly, pushing my plate away. I don't know what's worse. I admitted the fact that you don't love me anymore, or the fact that you would have let me keep loving you anyway. Her eyes glistened, but I didn't feel bad for her, not anymore. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a few bills, and tossed them onto the table before standing up. Meredith followed suit, looking up at me like she was trying to figure out how to stop what was happening. Tobias, she started, her voice cracking. Can we at least know? I cut her off. We can't. She inhaled sharply, but I didn't stay to see her reaction. I turned, walked past the counter, and stepped out into the morning light. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going home the moment. I stepped outside. The air felt different, like something heavy had lifted. Even if just slightly, the sun was higher now, warming my skin, but I still felt cold inside. I walked to my car, gripping the door handle, but I didn't get in, not yet. Instead, I just stood there staring at my reflection in the window. I barely recognized the man looking back at me, tired eyes stubble along my jaw that hadn't bothered to shave, shoulders hunched like I was carrying something too heavy to bear. Was this what 10 years with Meredith had turned me into, someone so used to being overlooked that I didn't even notice when I was being tolerated instead of loved? I clenched my jaw, forcing the thought away. I couldn't go down that road. Not now. A sudden noise behind me made me tense. Footsteps, then her voice. Tobias, please don't walk away. I shut my eyes for a second before turning around. Meredith stood just outside the diner, her arms crossed tightly, her expression somewhere between panic and frustration. I don't understand, she said, shaking her head. Why are you making this so final? We can talk about this. We can figure it out. Figure what out? My voice was quiet, but it had weight to it. How to pretend for another 5 years, how to make it easier for you to stay miserable. She flinched, her throat bobbing as she swallowed. I never wanted to hurt you, she whispered, but you did. I exhaled sharply, running a hand through my hair. You think this is just about what you said last night? It is about the years you spent looking at me like I was furniture, the years you let me believe something that wasn't real. She bit her lip, looking away. I wasn't trying to be cruel. No, you were trying to be comfortable. Her head snapped up, eyes flashing. And what about you? Do you really think you were the perfect husband, that I was the only one who was unhappy? I let out a bitter laugh. No, but at least I wasn't lying to you. The words hit her like a slap. Her jaw tightened, and for a second, I thought she was going to argue, but then her shoulders slumped, and just like that, she looked smaller than I had ever seen her. I'd spent so many years seeing her as the center of my world, the person I'd built my life around, but right now, standing in front of her in this nowhere town, diner, parking lot, realized something that should have been obvious long ago. She wasn't my world. She was just a part of it, and part that no longer fit. She inhaled shakily. So what now? I glanced at my car, then back at her. Now I figure out who I am without you. Her breath hitched, and for the first time since this all started, I saw it, the realization sinking in that I wasn't waiting for her to fix this, that I wasn't going to let her decide what happened next, that I was done. I didn't wait for a response. I just turned, opened the door, and slid into the driver's seat as I started the car.
Ow. I saw her in the room, rearview mirror, standing frozen in the parking lot.
Watching me go for a moment, guilt tried to creep in for a moment. I almost let it, but then I pressed my foot on the gas and I didn't look back. Drove without a destination, just mile after mile of open road. The hum of the engine filling the silence where Meredith's voice used to be, the world blurred past me, towns and highways, trees bending in the wind. I wasn't running away, but wasn't ready to stop either. The weight of everything settled deeper into my chest the farther I went. It wasn't just the heartbreak, it was the years of being blind, of convincing myself that love was enough, that effort and devotion could make up for the absence of passion, for the lack of truth. I had lived in a fantasy, and now that it had crumbled, I didn't know who. I was outside of it, somewhere along the drive. I pulled into a gas station on the edge of a small town. It was the kind of place that felt stuck in time, an old sign hanging over the pumps, a single rusted vending machine buzzing near the entrance. I stepped out of the car, stretching my stiff limbs, the cool air stinging against my tired skin. Inside, the clerk barely looked up as I grabbed a bottle of water and a protein bar, but as I walked toward the counter, Someone else caught my eye. A man stood near the back, flipping through away. Magazine older, maybe in his late 50s, with weathered hands and a thoughtful frown. Something about him seemed familiar, though. I couldn't place it then, as if sensing my gaze. He looked up, his eyes locked onto mine, and for a second, I saw a flicker of recognition. Then he nodded like he knew exactly what. I was going through, "You look like you've been driving a long time," he said, his voice rough with age. I hesitated before nodding. "Yeah, trying to outrun something." A dry laugh escaped me, more like trying to figure out where. "I'm supposed to be," he set the magazine down and leaned on the counter. "That's the thing about leaving," he said, "you don't always know where you're going, but sometimes that's the best part." His words settled over me heavier than I expected. I paid for my things and stepped back outside, the man's voice still echoing in my head. I hadn't thought about it that way. I'd been so focused on what I had lost that I hadn't even considered what I might gain. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, staring at the road ahead. For the first time in years, I didn't have to answer to anyone. I didn't have to be the man who came home on time, who made sure dinner was ready, who asked if Meredith needed anything before thinking about himself. For the first time in years, I was free. The thought scared me, but it also felt good. I pulled out my phone, scrolling past Meredith's unread messages instead, opened my contacts and hovered over a name I hadn't thought about in too long. Lucas, my brother. We hadn't spoken much in the past few years. Life got in the way, work, marriage, distance. But if there was anyone who would understand, it was him. I took a deep breath and hit call. It rang twice before he picked up. Tobias's voice was groggy-like. I had woken him up then, as if realizing the time. He cleared his throat. "Man, it's been a while. Everything okay?" I hesitated, then finally I exhaled. "No," I admitted, "but I'm finally ready to figure out what okay looks like." Lucas didn't ask too many questions. He just listened. I didn't spill everything at once. I wasn't ready for that, but I told him enough for him to say, "You know, you don't have to figure this all out alone." For the first time in days, I let out a real breath. He invited me to stay with him for a while. No pressure, no expectations, just a place to land. While I sorted through the wreckage of my old life, and for the first time since, I had walked out of that house, said yes to something that wasn't tied to Meredith. The drive to his place took a few hours the entire way. I kept expecting my phone to ring again, another desperate attempt from her to reel me back in, but it never did. Maybe she had finally understood that I wasn't coming home by the time I reached Lucas's house. The sun was dipping below the horizon. He was waiting outside, leaning against his truck, arms crossed like he had been there a while. When I stepped out of the car, he didn't say anything. At first, just looked me over, taking in the exhaustion I knew was written all over my face. Then he nodded. "Good to see you, man." Something in my chest loosened at those words. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't expect me to pretend I was fine. He just knew inside. He handed me a beer, and we sat out on the porch in comfortable silence. The cicadas hummed in the distance. The air warm but not stifling. It had been a long time since I had felt this kind of peace. No tension, no pressure to fix something, no weight of someone else's expectations pressing down on me. "Do you regret it?" he asked, eventually. I took a slow sip of my drink, thinking, Did I regret walking away from the life I had built, from the woman I had loved? "No," I said finally. "I regret not seeing it sooner, but leaving, no. I think it was the first thing I've done for myself in a long time." Lucas nodded like he understood. Good, and for the first time, I believed it. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know what came next, but for the first time in years, the future didn't feel like a trap. It felt like an open road stretching wide ahead of me, and I was finally ready to see where it led. Thanks for watching. What do you think about how everything turned out? Do you think he made the right choice by leaving, or should he have tried to work things out? Let me know in the comments. I'm really curious to hear your take. If you enjoy true relationship stories, feel free to subscribe. More are coming soon.